Official opposition. Other opposition. The Hellenic Parliament, also known as the Greek Parliament, is the Parliament of Greece, located in the old royal palace, overlooking Syntagma Square in Athens. The Parliament is the supreme democratic institution that represents the citizens through an elected body of members of Parliament. It is a unicameral legislature of 300 members, elected for a 4-year term. During 1844 to 1863 and 1927 to 1935, the Parliament was bicameral with an upper house, the Senate, and a lower house, the Chamber of Deputies, which retained the name Voli. Several important Greek statesmen have served as speakers of the Hellenic Parliament. The first national parliament of the independent Greek state was established in 1843, after the September 3rd Revolution, which forced King Otto to grant a constitution. The Constitution of 1844 established a constitutional monarchy under the decisive power of the monarch, who exercised legislative power jointly with the elected House of Representatives and the appointed Senate. It also established the ministers' accountability vis-a-vis the acts of the monarch who was appointing and suspending them. In October 1862, a rising wave of discontent led the people and the military to rebel again against King Otto and oust him along with the Wittelsbach dynasty. The revolt marked the end of constitutional monarchy and the beginning of a crown democracy with George Christian Wilhelm of the Schleswig-Holstein-Sonderburg-Glücksburg dynasty as monarch. The Constitution of 1864 created a single-chamber parliament, elected for a 4-year term, and abolished the Senate. Moreover, the king preserved the right to convoke ordinary and extraordinary parliamentary sessions, and dissolve parliament at his discretion, as long as the cabinet signed and endorsed the dissolution decree. With the revisions of 1911 and 1952, it lasted more than a century, with one of its most important elements being the restoration of the principle of popular sovereignty. In 1911, a revision of the constitution resulted in stronger human rights, the reinforcement of the rule of law and the modernization of institutions, among them the parliament. With regard to the protection of individual rights, the most noteworthy amendments to the Constitution of 1864 were a more effective protection of individual security, equality in taxation, the right to assemble and the inviolability of the domicile. Furthermore, the Constitution facilitated expropriation so that land be allocated to poor farmers, while at the same time guaranteeing judicial protection of property rights. Finally, it was the first time that the Constitution made provision for mandatory and free education for all. While the process of constitutional revision was simplified, the Constitution of 1927 made provisions for a head of state that the Parliament and the Senate would elect to serve a 5-year term. This President of the Republic would be held unaccountable from a political point of view. He would not possess any legislative powers and could only dissolve the Parliament with the Senate's approval. It also recognized the status of political parties as organic elements of the polity and established their proportional representation in the composition of parliamentary committees. This reform of the constitution is also a part of the Second Hellenic Republic, in reference to the Greek state using a republican democracy as a form of governance. This constitutional change was initiated in January 1924 and initiated on April 13, 1924 by the Fourth National Assembly. Following World War II, the development of parliamentary institutions resumed in 1948 and in the beginning of the 1950s. The Constitution of 1952 consisted of 114 articles and to a large extent was strongly attached to the constitutions of 1864 and 1911. Its central innovations were the explicit institutionalization of parliamentarianism and the consolidation for the first time of the voting rights of women, as well as of their right to stand as candidates for parliamentary office. In February 1963, the government of Konstantinos Karamanlis submitted a proposal for an extensive revision of the constitution. Yet the proposal was never put into practice because only a few months after its submission, the government resigned and parliament dissolved. After 7 years of military dictatorship, on the 8th of December 1974, A referendum was conducted to decide the nature of the form of government. By a majority of 69.18%, the Greeks decided against a constitutional monarchy and for a parliamentary republic. The Constitution of 1975 was drafted using those of 1952 and 1927, as well as the draft constitutional revision proposals of 1963. While numerous clauses were also based on the West German Constitution of 1949 and the French Constitution of 1958, it included various clauses on individual and social rights, in line with developments at that time, and introduced a presidential parliament